Nigeria's tax regulator has a new rule for settling disputes. The Federal Inland Revenue Service says tax defaulters instituting legal cases against the agency will pay 50% of the assessed amount in dispute into an interest-yielding account of the Federal High Court before a hearing. Mohammed Nami, executive chairman of the FIRS, disclosed this on Friday during a public hearing organized by the House of Representatives Committee on Public Accounts investigating revenue leakages arising from tax waivers and incentives to foreign companies granted pioneer status. Ayodeji Ebo, head of retail investment at Chapel Hill Denham, joins us live to discuss further. Ayodeji, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. What do you make of this this rule by the FIRS?
Well, I think it's going to be a tough one. Based on what they're saying is that even before you contest any case, if you have been found, to have defaulted, that means you need to pay half of that amount into an interest yielding account. But I feel that they can also consider a situation where there's a limit to how the case can be prolonged. So you look, for instance, I always make reference to looking at our elections. So when there are, if you have parties contesting the result of the election, so there's a limited number of days, I think 180 days, that all cases must be closed. So I feel if they may want to consider having maybe like a 90-day window period that even when you are contesting, the case must be closed within that period so that it can be established whether you have defaulted or not. So I believe that would be that would really be more helpful than trying to allow enforce that payment is made even before you are contesting, or you are contesting any allegations.
Thank you so much for that, Ayodeji. Do you think enough is being done to disincentivize tax defaulters in Nigeria?
I think looking at the law, when you look at the FIRS Act of 2007, Section 40, so you have for tax defaulters, especially for those that tries to evade tax, you are expected, if you are found guilty, you are expected to be to serve about 3 years and in jail, as well as also pay about 10% of the amount that you've held. But you know what we've noticed in Nigeria, we've hardly seen any major conviction in terms of tax evasion. We've not seen our tax defaulters. We've not seen any major names. When you look at other crimes, especially, we can easily recall names within the football space, or what we call the sports space. You can see, because they earn a lot of money. So we can see a lot of examples of notable names that have been convicted. So I believe that we have the law, and what we need to begin to do is how do we want to enforce it? And like you mentioned earlier, there need to be maybe a window, a period where if there's a case that's been allegation, then everything has to be sorted within a certain period. So it's not prolonged unnecessarily.
Thank you, Ayo. Tax to GDP ratio in Nigeria, still single digits, still low. Doesn't look like the government, though, is keen on raising taxes. What's the solution there?
I believe it's the solution is not far-fetched. It's increasing the tax base. So, and when we talk about increasing the tax base, then we need to look for what are the incentives to get people on board. So we've seen some initiative in the past few years that maybe if you need to access any government funding or support, that you need to provide your tax. So you look at the structure of the Nigerian economy, you know it's more of the informal sector. So there needs to be a structure where the informal sector needs to be captured. And before the informal sectors they would also want to submit themselves to any tax return, they would also need to know what's the incentive or the benefits to them. So how they can be captured, we know a lot of the intervention funds or the support that have been provided, especially during the COVID era. Some of the criteria was to also help collect data so that they also even know in terms of those that are actually operating within the country. So I believe that if there's an incentive, and when we talk about the incentive, if you are submitting yourself, maybe there's a certain, even in terms of credit, the rates that you get, because you know that you'll be able to make that back when that business begins to, the business is registered and the business also continues to expand. You'll be able to get that shortfall back in terms of the return. So I believe that may be one way that government can look at to attract a lot of the informal sector into the tax net, rather than focus on the few. When you look at the corporate, you look at the few registered companies, and you continue to just focus on them. And that's why I think lastly, you look at the collection rate from 2019, apart from 2018 to 2019, that it grew from 3 trillion to about 4 trillion. You'll see that the average has remained around 4.9, 5.2 trillion. So there's not been any major growth based on FIRS and collection in the last 3 years.
Ayodeji Abel, Head of Retail Investment at Chapel Hill Denham, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insights on the new tax moves there from the FIRS.